Welcome to Season 4 of the NAC 4 Business Podcast.
Before we get into today's conversation, Canada Growth Network. Here's the math. A full CRM, email marketing, funnels, and automations for less than a coffee a day. That's $47 a month Canadian with a $1 trial to start. If you're building a business and still duct taping tools together, check the link in the show notes.
Question the audience. Why does growing a care business feel so lonely and harder than it should? That's the problem our guest tackles head on in this episode. He will unpack why traditional networking fails care businesses, how isolation quietly undermines growth and decision making, and what changes when leaders shift from collecting contacts to building real trust, collaboration, and community. He'll share practical lessons from the Care Connector Network on creating safe spaces, stronger partnerships, and people-first growth insights that will apply well beyond the care sector. Our guest today is Iain Clague from the Care Connector. He's the co-founder of this network and a growing community that brings care providers, professionals, and suppliers together through meaningful connection rather than transactional networking. With more than 35 years of experience across hospitality, nutrition, and the care sector, Iain has worked hands-on with care organizations of all sizes to improve sustainability, performance, and real-world outcomes. Inspired by his mother's career as a nurse, he built the Care Connector Network to reduce isolation in the care sector and create practical, collaborative support that helps care businesses grow while keeping people at the center of what they do. While the network began in the UK, the challenges it addresses are universal, and the model is designed to work anywhere care and people intersect. Iain, it's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you have a favorite quote or saying, sir?
A favorite quote or saying? Get stuff done.
It sounds close to a sporting challenge slogan. So what problem, looking at the care industry, what problem made you go, hey, this has to change? So what was the trigger? What was the, gosh, this can be better?
Well, just for answer that a little bit, I just want to rephrase a little bit what you said about care businesses being difficult. Businesses in care are difficult, whether you're supplying into it, whether you're a professional in it, or whether you actually run a care business yourself. You know? Just a little bit of clarification, because I know that a lot of your listeners are in the US and Canada and stuff. When I talk about the care sector, I'm talking about care homes, care at home, complex living, anything that's to do with providing care for vulnerable people, whether that be children or adults. So I just want to clarify that bit, because I know that conversations I have with people over in the States, sometimes it gets lost and they go, what do you mean by the care sector? So if I say the care sector, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So your question was what problem in care made me want to do what I do?
Yeah.
So my background is nutrition and catering, as you said before. And I was running a nutrition and catering consultancy for the care sector. And I was actually down the other end of the country. I live in Scotland, and I was actually down in the south coast of England when the little bug that hit the world arrived on the shores over here. And in that time, I was driving back up to Scotland, which is about a 10-hour journey. And every single one of my clients rang me and cancelled any future work. So I was left, got home, sat twiddling my thumbs, watching what was going on across all the Facebook groups and everything else that I was involved with. And I noted that there was some disconnect massively, and that the care sector works in silos. Everyone sees everyone as competition rather than collaboration, which I'm sure we're going to go into later on. But I just saw that there was these issues going on. And then as we went through that time frame, I started to see more and more that the smaller providers of care, the smaller care homes, the smaller companies that provided care at home, they were really struggling because they weren't getting that same level of support that a bigger organization had. So when I actually set up the network, it was for those people. It was for smaller providers and smaller suppliers to try and talk to each other. And as we've gone through that, I thought to myself, we need to start bringing people together. We're all in the same place, you know. And then last year it hit me. I know that we jumped ahead 5 years, but last year it hit me, and it just made so much sense. It's like the book "Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus."
Yeah.
We both want the same outcome. The supplier and the provider want the same outcome, which is better care for the people that they're looking after. And the suppliers want to help people do that, but they're speaking in a different language. So that's how I started it, really. I just set it up as a Facebook group. And I said to people, look, just if you need something, ask. If you've got a problem, ask, and if you've got something to sell, let people know. Because at this point in time, people are going, well, how do I sell to people? They're not picking up the phone. Well, no, unless you're turning up with a member of staff or the cure for COVID in this hand and your product in that hand going, if you buy this, you can have this. That wasn't going to happen. So I just set up a Facebook group, really. It was out of frustration, just seeing what the problems were that were going on. But then we played Okie Kokie with lockdown. I think we did that all across the world. We all played the Okie Kokie together. 1 minute we're in, next minute we're out. And we got to December. And every time we were coming out, I would get the phone calls going, can you come back in? And then every time we were going back in, I was getting the phone calls going, no, you're out, And we got to the Christmas lockdown over here when they decided to lock down again at Christmas in December. And I thought I need to do something else. And I remembered I'd started this Facebook group and I went, right, let's do something with this properly and really help the care sector. So that's why it all started up.
So in the care sector and having a healthcare institutional background, I know there's everything from you go into a healthcare facility because you have an ailment. It might involve surgery. It could be something good. It could be giving birth to a child, and then to everything else that can happen. The reason why you go to the hospital. And I know you're not talking about that care element. You're talking either someone is either coming out of healthcare and they need support for a while they're curing and getting healthier, or it's it's transition of life that's coming around, and so you're just making them comfortable, or the person has disabilities where they can't provide for themselves, and or they're just aging. So those are all kinds of different sectors. And do you find that there's a lot of obviously, if I'm dealing with elder care, is going to be a lot different than, let's say, someone who's post delivery, childbirth, right? Almost like the midwifery component. How do you does that first off encompass that entire bucket of and there's probably more. I probably haven't captured everything, right? But does it uncover that entire bucket, and do you focus on any one of those areas? But I'll let you answer the next question, then I got more questions coming out.
No worries. Yeah, people usually do when we start talking. So I say, to make it easy for everyone on this side of the pond, I say it's anyone that cares for people that not the NHS. Right. So what I mean by that is as you said, their healthcare, right? So your hospital settings, your doctors, your clinics, all that sort of stuff. I don't deal with that at this precise minute in time. That's not where we are. I deal with anything else. So aging, as I said, like care facilities, so it could be retirement villages. It could be, care homes. It could be dementia homes. It could be dementia facilities. Disabilities, all of it. Care at home. Because the fundamentals of care are the same. This is why when I started speaking to some people and got involved with some people over in the States, and we started talking, and I always laugh because the first conversation we had, we were on for 2.5 hours, and we could have literally come from each side of the village and met in the pub and been talking about this, and it's the same problems, And the more and more I looked at it, and this is where I think differently to a lot of people. I'm dyslexic and I've got ADHD. My brain thinks in like major different ways. And I start going, okay, so the fundamentals of care are the same, right? The average care home, so a care facility where the elderly are residents, let's go with that first to make it easy, right? They will use from concept to demolishing around 900 different category of supplier, not 900 different suppliers, 900 different categories of suppliers, right? There's over 110 just to put a kitchen together and keep it running, right? So when you look at that, it's the same. The delivery of care is the same, whether you're assisting someone at meal times or it doesn't make any difference where you are in the world. It's the same thing. The only thing that changes really is the actual legislation, right? Legislation and funding, right? Where's the money coming from? Okay. And that's the big question everyone wants to know. But where's the money coming from, right? Those are the two things. And when we look at the bigger picture and that side of it, it was like, wow, this incorporates everything. So it needs to be everything. because we can all learn from each other as well, and people miss that step change as well. They don't, as I said, people work in silos because they see everyone else as competition. Whereas when people actually start talking to each other, and I actually had a meeting this morning with one of my clients that's on our program, and I've already put him in touch with another care provider just down the road.
Yeah.
Because he does something completely different. So they can actually talk to each other. And that person that I've put him in touch with, the people that they look after might end up having to be someone that he looks after. But they don't talk to each other. And you go, it's madness.
Are you finding then, and I've seen it on here in Canada and in Ontario, that you'll have, say, for retirement homes, you have, someone's put up a structure, et cetera. There's housing, there's food, et cetera. There's care that's provided, and depending on the need, et cetera. And then you have other operations that are more one-off. They'll supply you a person to come to your home and provide service. Are you finding it a mix between cottage industry versus larger corporation, or is it a transition from cottage to corporation, but then you also have licensed professionals intermixed in between it? Because, if I go to a doctor's office here, although they might be getting funding from the state, they're still a separate business, right? And then you have midwives, which is something else that happens here in Ontario, and their funding is, and again, it's a different structure. They have a certain competency level and training. Is it is it a hodgepodge? And I guess where I'm going with this whole question is, what does the landscape look like? And then from your network, are you providing then the training, information, or supply chain across connections and going, hi, this is my box, this is my niche, and then I know I have to hand the person off to the next niche? Are you? I know that's not a simple question, because I've asked about
I
four
think,
different things, all kind of
I
wrapped
think,
in one box.
yeah, I think I know where you're going there. So let's start right back at that beginning of that question, and let's try and work our way through that and unpick it. So in the UK, around 87% of care businesses have got less than 5 services registered. There's 83% have got 1, right? And this is the bit that might come up later on, might not. I don't know where if it's gonna fit in anywhere else later on. But from a supplier perspective, going back to those over 900 category of supplier, right? From a supplier perspective, everyone's chasing that one that have got like 100 plus registered services, and you're going, well, there's 87% of them over here that don't have that back office support, that are not going to push back on you on price all the time. They're not going to have something that's long drawn out. Let's move with what we've got, right? And I think that from what you said, from the cottage industry side of things, is that there are a lot of people that set up care businesses, right? So this is why last year we launched the 2 programs that we've spoken about before, which is the care provider incubator program and the care supplier incubator program. And we're trying to get them to speak to each other in the same language as well. That's one of the things that we're working on. But it's that people set up care businesses because of a couple of things usually, right? One, they've got money. So they've been in the city, they've worked in the city or something like that. They make lots of money, and it's like, let's put our money into this, right? Good investment. However, they don't understand care, right? Or the other side is they come from care, right? And they see that there's a problem. They see the fact that care isn't delivered the way that they want it to be delivered. So they go, I'm going to set up a business and I'm going to do it the right way. Problem is then they get into care, right? And it's funny because I talk to suppliers that have gone into care and they start speaking in care language. And I speak to suppliers that used to be in care and that are now supplying a service or a product, and they switch to supplier language. And you're going, well, you know their language and you're still not speaking it, right? But the problem with the second lot, especially, they are usually the ones that have got those individual businesses, right? But they don't have that business acumen, and no one teaches them the business acumen. And that's one of the things that we're starting to do now with the programs. And again, it isn't going to make any difference whether I get somebody from over there that goes, Ian, can I come and join your program? Yeah, absolutely. Or whether they're over here. because the fundamentals are the same. As I said, all we do is we look at it from a different perspective. So the people that are on my program, if they work in domiciliary care at home, I then put them in with those people that do that stuff, that are my members. And if they're a care home, residential or nursing, then I bring them into that space. So the size of the industry is massive, but it's small when you look at the actual people that are in it and what they're doing. From a funding perspective, what you were saying then, I think, was the next bit of that was there is two types of funding. One is private, and the other one, it comes from the government. So pretty much the same, as over there. And one of the things that makes me laugh all the time, I see this, and this has gone off on a little tangent here with this one, but it's like when people go, we're aiming to be compliant, and you go, no, compliance is the floor, not the ceiling.
Yeah. To say, compliance. Yeah, I'm just going to say, we're aiming for it. You have to be there already.
Yes. And this is the thing that I see, people talk about that, and they talk about being compliant, and they talk about compliance and quality and this and that and the other. And you go, but that's where, that level is. That's why I've just written a document going, should care businesses have to, or a journal piece saying, should care businesses have to earn their money? Now, obviously, that's very controversial because they all go, well, we earn our money because we do this and that and the other. And I go, no, I understand that. Right. But what I mean is it doesn't matter where you sit on the scale. If you're getting that government funded person, right, it doesn't matter where you are, you're still going to get the same amount of money, right?
Yep.
There's no incentive to be better. There's no driver there from a behavioral point of view. There's no drivers to actually make people want to do better.
You find that there's a lot of in the tech industry, right? Especially with microchips and computers, there's always a new iteration. It's just, it's I think it's Moore's law, right? Just there's always something. It grows over time. In healthcare, it's the same thing as as science looks deeper in how to approach people, how to do wound care management, for example, et cetera. Different medicines, et cetera, for certain circumstances. Is the education piece sometimes where people staying ahead of the curve, staying, sorry, cutting, maybe cutting edge might be the right word, but always staying in tune with what is the best practice.
Okay, now you've hit a raw in what I think puts quite a few people off when I talk about this sort of stuff. I think personally that training across the whole of the sector is poor.
Okay.
Because a lot of the jobs are in care, at care level, are minimum wage, that there's a lot of transients with care workers, the same as they used to be with chefs and stuff like that. Back in the day when I first started, we used to joke when I first started, who's going to end up where? Because at the start of the season, we would all start in a different hotel on the promenade in the Isle of Man and Douglas. And then we would all start moving around because it's like, that place is rubbish, so I'm going to go and work here. And then it's like, that place is rubbish, so I'm going to go and work here. And it just literally everyone just went like that. And you usually ended up back in the same place by the end of it, right? By the end of the summer. And this is one of the things, it's one of the reasons I went over to the States and did the stuff around behavioral performance management and stuff and behavioral leadership, was because of people would do when I would go in and do training and implementation of the nutrition stuff, for example, they would do what I wanted them to do while I was there. Then I would go away. Then I would come back and they'd be doing exactly what they were doing before I went in the first place. Right. I don't do little things. I don't do tiny things. So my degree when I went and studied dietetics was me looking into a 12-week course in nutrition to teach people in the gym that turned into me going to university for 7 years. The problem I was having of why are they not doing this turned into me going over to the States. The network was, this is a problem, let's fix it. And then someone said, can't we have our own platform? And I went, yeah, of course. Boom. Right. No little things, always big. But I think because of the transients, I think because of because of that, so we've got the low minimum wage, people move around a lot because they think that the grass is greener over here, which means that there's a gap now, an employment gap, which then means we need to fill that gap to provide that care, but we don't have time to train that person properly. right? So we're going to do it as fast and as cheap as possible to be able to get them up to legislation so we can get them onto the floor or out into the community wherever they're delivering the care. Then they don't do it right, or problems happen, or things go wrong, and then they get blamed for it when it's actually training in the care sector is poor, right? In most instances, right? We've gone way too far down the e-learning route, and I should imagine it's the same over there. I speak to people over there. There's no problem with e-learning to back up stuff. If you're working with a person, then you want that person to understand what it's like to work with a person. You know, I always say I was on the lifeboat crew, which is like it's rescue, right? So the RNLI over here, if anyone doesn't know, look it up. But it's a voluntary service where we go and rescue people at sea. And I always use that analogy of when the pager went off to call us, are you happy, or would you be happy if we just sat in the boathouse every week and just looked at computers? Or are you happy that we went out to sea and launched the boat and recovered the boat and did everything every week? You don't want the person going, how do we start this again? Can anyone remember what was on page 17 to fire up the radar system? You don't want that, but that's the mentality. You want people to be able to go, right, this is what we do, boom, bang, done, you know?
Practice makes perfect.
Well, practice makes permanent, but perfect practice makes perfect.
True.
Right. But it's that whole thing of, if we did things right, people spend more money trying to fix things in the care sector than they do doing it right in the first place. I will look at that every single time, right? Every single time I'll say that people they try and do it cheap, it doesn't work, so then they end up spending more money, right? And a perfect example of that is somebody asked me how much it was going to come and cost for me to come in and do something with the nutrition stuff, and I turned around and said, it's going to cost you £500 a day. And they said, oof, that's a lot of money, and we haven't got the budget for that. Okay. They came back to me 2 months later. They'd had a bad report from the inspection body and said, can you come and do it? And I said, yeah, it's £600 a day. And they went, but it was £500 a day a few months ago. And I went, yeah, because like I wanted you to have it. You didn't want it. Now you need it, you know?
Yeah.
I only charged them £500. I went and did the job for them. But I was trying to prove a point that rather than try and fix the problem, because the fix costs more than the prevention, you know? I use from a nutrition side of things in the UK, right? So we've got 65 million people in the UK, right? Ish, give or take. How much do you think we spend on treating malnutrition in the UK a year?
Wow. Well, the fact you just said malnutrition, and it's, UK has been everywhere.
No, just in the UK, not.
Yeah,
don't-
no. What I'm getting at is UK's been everywhere over the last 2-3 centuries. The food would have arrived. Is that just a lack of awareness then for diet, or is that a lack of
We
awareness how to prep food?
in the UK we spend £19.2 billion a year
On
malnutrition. That's how much it costs. That's how much the NHS spends each year, £19.2 billion, right? Now, people go, what does that look like? Because people can't imagine that figure. That's a big figure, right?
Yeah.
So it's 2 brand new aircraft carriers, right? It's 16 state-of-the-art hospitals. It's 410,000 wages, or 116 million bottles of wine.
In which case, you're back to your malnutrition again if you're just doing that much wine.
But if you're looking at that, but when we look at that and then go, how much do we actually spend on treating it? Not so much, right?
Yeah.
So do things right. That's the main thing, what I'm trying to say here. If you've got a business, doesn't matter what it is, do it right the first time. It's going to cost you a lot less, you know?
Pay me later.
Yeah.
And later is usually more expensive anyhow.
Absolutely it is, because there's more to it.
So basically you've told me that you've established, hey, listen, here's a platform. Guys, whether you're in the cottage industry or you're in a corporation setting, you're basically in the same boat. You're in the same harbor. Rising tide lifts all boats. And, if we stay ahead of things and, between the suppliers and the providers, everybody performs better and you have better outcomes. Is this something that helps what you're doing now, help other businesses scale up? In other words, okay, we got this right now. I might be a 5-man team that's going out to service clients. I want to expand to maybe 20. There's enough business out there. Is that something then you help then make that okay? This is how you expand. These are the things you have to have in place. What you did under a 5-man team, if you're doing a rescue, versus if you're the aircraft carrier, and it isn't 5 men they're running an aircraft carrier. There's a few more folk on board, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we're trying to do with people is get them out of their heads. Most of us that run small businesses, we're all the same, right? The smart ones have other people that help them. Right. I've got business mentors. I have different ones. I have a few different people, like human beings, and also ChatGPT, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, AI, blah," and you go, "But it works if you teach it properly and learn from it and learn it. Then it works." I learned the other day when I was having an argument with it to tell it to stop using the program that's been put into it. So this is a little bit of a hint for everybody. If you're using it for business, tell it you want it as a business mentor, director, and a business partner, right? And stop with the inbuilt, fuzzy, warm, you're doing amazing, right? Because it will keep telling you that. Now mine goes, no.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point.
It does. It says no. Don't do that, right? Or do this. Or what about this, right? And I've done a lot of work with it. So I'm using that as well. I'm using to help my clients build their businesses as well. Not just that prompt, but we're helping them with that. But yeah, I mean, the thing is as I say, we're everything. We're HR, we're finance, we're procurement, we're the CEO, with the marketing team, the sales team, the creation team. And at some point, something's going to give. It did with me last year, last year, yes. It was this time last year. This time last year, I was in bed. This time last year, I didn't get out of bed for about 6 weeks. I burnt out. I had been trying to do everything by myself and it didn't work. It's like, it's all right. I can do it. And then I started to feel ill. And then I went to see the doctor and he said to me, "You're burnt out. You can't keep going at this rate." This is when I started looking into getting other people. And this is when I did start doing more with the Care Connector as well, to try and help people to get that burden off. Because if you remember what I said, there's 87% of care home or care businesses in the UK have got one service. They're all going to be in that space.
Yeah.
Where they're whizzing around trying to figure everything out, and that's when problems happen. And I think that's a lot. It says for both sides, it's the same. Unfortunately, I've heard of people's businesses that have been closing down over the past month. I've had 5 people come to me and say that they're having to close. And they didn't need to, really. They just needed to get some help to move in the right direction, and focus and get clarity on what they're actually given and what they're doing.
So you're looking at expanding into the North American market from the UK. That's going to be a bigger venture because everything in the US is big, right? You may as well if you're doing China or India, right? The population is a woof like this, right? Compared to Canada, they have more of people. If I were a care provider, whether I'm a small, medium size. So what you're suggesting is that tap into this as for a resource and also community to share the strengths. And I also I truly appreciate that you're saying, hi, it's not about, a purchase. It's not transactional. It's relationship based. And so you're looking to build that relationship out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, when you're a small business, you're in that, I need to get money on the table, right? I need to put food on the table. So therefore I need money in the bank,
Yeah.
right? So everybody focuses their efforts into that rather than building relationships, right? I had this conversation today or yesterday, I think it was, with somebody it was today, actually. It's easier to sell somebody else's business than it is your own, right? It's easier. I don't mean sell the business. I mean sell what they do. Right? Yeah. Not go and sell their business for whether they want it or not. I've sold your business. It's a case of when we go and try and sell something, right? It's emotional. because we're trying to put food on the table. When somebody else is talking about our business, right? If they're going to join the Care Connector network, great. If they don't, nah. I'm not going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, well, they didn't join the Care Connector network, and therefore it's this and that and the other. Can you just pause it there? Because somebody's knocking and incessantly on the door and won't go away. So, it's like you're not in that space. You're not worried about whether someone does that. So it's easier for you to talk about someone else's business, right? That's what I'm trying to get across to my members at the minute. I want them to collaborate. We need to learn about each other's businesses, right? So this is what we do on the networking sessions and stuff as well. Let's learn about what we each do so that when we're in, because it's added value as well, right? So I had a meeting on Thursday with one of my suppliers that's on the program, and I was saying this to them. When you finish the conversation about what you do, say to them, what other issues have you got going on in your business at the minute? I'm part of this network that's got people in. What can I do to help? Right? The guy sent me an email. He had a meeting with this person. He sent me an email about half an hour later and he went, do you know anyone that's got cookers? Right? They're looking for a cooker. Yeah. I've got 3 people that are sitting on the fence about joining the network. So what did I do? I go to them and I say, I've got this person that wants to buy a cooker. If you come and join the network, I'll make the introduction. And it's a win-win for everybody.
Yep.
Right? So now everyone's winning. But that person now that care manager looks at the energy supplier person as not just the energy supplier person, he's the connector person. He can find me stuff. And this is what we tend to try and sell ourselves and we sit in our own little silos. Whereas if we actually open our minds, use more than one brain cell at a time, we can actually go, well, if I'm adding value to that person by going, what else have you got a problem with? They're going to go, why are you asking me that question? Not necessarily say it out loud, but in their brain, they're going, why are you asking me that question? That's really interesting that you're concerned about what else is happening in my business.
So, Iain, if someone is listening to this call and they're a care provider, either agency or a supplier, how do they reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and also go to the careconnector.co.uk at the minute. I will do a specific one for the other side, so that it's not going through the .co.uk one, but they can reach out through that. Iain at the careconnector.co.uk as well. They can catch me there. And, I'm all for having conversations. I love having conversations. I love talking, as you can tell. I think that's why I was last year's regional president for the Professional Speaking Association of Scotland. But I want to help people. There's one of the questions that we didn't do is the why bit, which is what you started off with about my mum.
Yeah.
And this is the why, really. Why do I do what I do? It's because of that. So my dad was in the Royal Navy. My mum was a carer of the elderly nurse, has been all my life, right? She only retired when COVID came, right? She was in her 70s. She was actually looking after people younger than she was in a nursing home. And the matron wanted my mum back at work. My dad was at sea. And she says, well, I can't because I got the wee one. And she said, don't worry about that. We'll put a cot in one of the rooms, right? So I actually used to go and sleep with one of the little old ladies in the nursing home because my mum was a night nurse. So I used to go and sleep in there. And then I've been brought up in that environment, and I was either going to be a nurse or a chef. And there's a few things that put me off the nursing side, so I went down the chefing side. I find it really hard knowing that we can all do better if we all had that little bit more knowledge and that little bit more willing and that little bit more understanding of what we're actually trying to achieve, and that people should know that there's people out there that do want to help. I want to help. I want to do as much as possible, right? Right. Reason I burnt out was because I just kept giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, taking a step back a bit. I still give a lot, right? We still give a lot within the network, but the why is because we're all heading that way, right?
Oddly enough, we all seem to be aging. At least I get reminded when my body doesn't work the way I thought it did at age 20.
Right? We're all aging. We all know somebody that's like got a family member in care, or a child that needs some more support, or a child in a children's home, or a person in a disability unit, or we all know somebody that gets care, needs care, and stuff like that. That's a conversation for another day about the fact that we don't talk about care until we need care. In fact, we don't talk about care until after we need care. There's sort of like
Conversation.
an
Yep.
advert for nappies or advert for diapers, and then there's an advert for, the Saga holidays, the over 50s cruises and life insurance, and then you've got your funeral plans, but there's nothing in between, right? About what's going to happen when you get older. So I think it's really important that we do start looking at this as a whole, and it is society's problem. It's not just the people that work in the sector, but there are people out there that want to help. Not every supplier to the care sector is a ravenous great white that just wants to come in and eat you. They have got the help out there. It's exactly the same reason as why people start care businesses. It's because the supplier has seen that there's a problem, and it's like, well, we can help fix that problem, and then we can all make it better. And then people make more money, people are cared for better, and everyone sleeps at night.
Iain, I want to say thank you so much for being a guest today. If you haven't gauged it or haven't figured it out, Ian's pretty focused on being a helping support. And from watching his mother dedicate her life to nursing, he saw firsthand how nursing care, how care overall depends on people. And it's not about a transaction; it's about being there for somebody, and he's looking to build the future better for us.
Everything you heard today is for educational purposes only. It's not professional advice. Before you act on anything, talk to a certified expert in your area. Your accountant, your lawyer, someone who knows your situation. We share perspectives. You make the decisions. Want more? Head over to blog.knack4business.com, packed with practical episodes on AI, marketing, leadership, and growth. No fluff, just the good stuff. Subscribe while you're there. Until next time, keep building.